Russian troops are being slaughtered with their own rifles in hand. The AK-12, Moscow's so-called next-gen assault rifle, is failing spectacularly in the trenches of Ukraine, jamming, rusting, breaking down mid-battle. Meanwhile, Ukrainian soldiers are armed with something far deadlier, the AR-15. Custom-built, battlefield-tested, and absolutely dominating its Russian counterpart in real combat. In this video, we'll break down the brutal results of this rifle showdown, why the AK-12 is falling apart under pressure, how the AR-15 and its Ukrainian variant are changing the battlefield, and what this says about the future of small arms warfare. Because in this war, even your rifle can decide if you live or die. Let's start with how this iconic rifle rivalry began. The AR-15. The design of this gas-operated assault rifle was based on the Armalite AR-10, but it was reimagined to be lighter and to fire a high-velocity small-caliber cartridge, allowing infantry to carry more ammunition without added weight. Around this time, the US military was seeking a new automatic rifle to replace some of its World War II-era firearms, such as the M1 carbine, M3 grease gun, and Thompson submachine gun. In the end, the military chose the M14 rifle, but real-world tests in the Vietnam War proved that the M14 struggled to compete with the Russian-made AK-47. The military then set about looking for something better. They did numerous tests with the Armalite AR-15 and revealed that just 5 to 7 soldiers armed with AR-15s were as effective as 11-man units with M14s. They also found that soldiers using the AR-15 could carry close to 3 times as much ammo as M14 users, 649 rounds to 220. Furthermore, the AR-15 was rated 3 times more reliable than the M14. In short, it was a better rifle all round, with clear potential for military application. The original Armalite AR-15 eventually provided the basis for the US military's M16 rifle, which has since become the most produced firearm in the 5.56mm caliber and used by forces around the world. In the modern world, control and adaptability are everything, whether on the battlefield or in business. That's why today's sponsor Odoo is revolutionizing how people build and manage websites, making it faster, easier, and more efficient than ever. With Odoo's website builder, you can deploy a sleek, professional website in just a few clicks. There's no coding required. Whether you're launching a defense analysis blog, an e-commerce store, or a tactical training platform, a strong online presence is key to credibility and impact. Odoo's intuitive drag-and-drop system lets you customize your site with ease, while its AI-powered tools refine your messaging, generate compelling content, and optimize your calls to action, because in any mission, communication is critical. And here's the best part. Your first app with Odoo is completely free, forever. That includes unlimited hosting, customer support, and even a custom domain for the first year. No hidden fees, no surprises. Having the right strategy and the right tools makes all the difference. So click the link in the description to try Odoo's free website builder today and bring your ideas to life. Building the website you've always imagined has never been easier. However, the story of the AR-15 didn't end there. Armalite sold the rights to its rifle to Colt in 1959, and Colt continued to use the name for a line of semi-automatic rifles for civilian and law enforcement use. Since then, numerous versions of the AR-15 have been developed and sold not just in the United States, but around the world, most commonly used for sport shooting, hunting, home defense, and in the world of law enforcement. Additionally, over the last few years, we've increasingly seen the AR-15 style rifles in the hands of Ukrainian soldiers, fending off Russian invaders. But why would a major military force like the Ukrainian Armed Forces pick a rifle that has historically been used by civilians rather than the military? There are several key reasons. Firstly, it's a question of availability. The US has thus far not provided Ukraine with large amounts of military-grade assault rifles like M16s and M4s. In contrast, AR-15s are incredibly easy for Ukraine to get hold of. They can legally purchase them in large quantities, which is so important at a time when Ukraine is being heavily bombarded and fighting on numerous fronts along its border. The country has also been able to source and stockpile good quality weapons, and the AR-15 is a great choice. In fact, this is one of the big reasons why AR-15 style rifles have proven so popular, not just in Ukraine, but elsewhere around the world over the decades. Approximately 1 in every 20 Americans own some variation of this rifle, and almost all major gun manufacturers produce their own AR-15 variants. The AR-15 has a modular design, setting it apart from so many other rifles that came before and allowing users to swap out pretty much any part they like. Traditional rifles had just one receiver, which is essentially the central part of the firearm, housing the key internal components like the bolt, firing mechanism, and trigger assembly. However, the AR-15 changed the game by dividing the receiver into 2 parts. the upper section which houses the barrel, bolt carrier group, and charging handle, and the lower section where the trigger mechanism, magazine well, and stock are situated. This offers so many advantages. It makes it easier to maintain, clean, and repair the rifle, for example, and easier to disassemble, store, and transport. But most vitally, it opens many doors for customization, as users can swap out different upper receivers to change the likes of caliber, barrel length, and optics without having to replace the entire rifle. Because the AR-15 is so customizable, manufacturers around the world have been able to produce a near countless array of aftermarket parts, gadgets, and accessories, allowing users to modify their weapons exactly as they see fit. This includes everything from alternative stocks and grips to the likes of laser sights, flashlights, red dot sights, and suppressors. It's no wonder the AR-15 has been called the Swiss Army knife of rifles, and compared to customizable toys like Barbie dolls and Lego. Here's why this matters for those fighting on the front lines of Ukraine. This is a dynamic, ever-evolving war, taking place across vast stretches of the Ukrainian border, with different terrain and varying combat conditions throughout the year. As they repel wave after wave of Russian attacks and also attempt to gain their ground where possible, soldiers fighting on the front lines might find themselves in all sorts of situations. They have to adapt, and they need rifles that are also adaptable and adjustable to suit the changing circumstances that surround them. For example, soldiers battling in the dead of winter, loaded up with heavy gear and thick winter clothing, benefit from rifles with shorter stocks that allow them to maintain their aim and precision rather than trying to work with a bulky, unwieldy weapon. Those battling at a far range, meanwhile, will have a much better chance of hitting their targets and staying alive if they have good optics fitted to their rifles, like red dot sights, scopes, and lasers. Meanwhile, for those fighting in urban conditions, rushing into buildings that may not have much or any lighting, having a flashlight fitted to their rifle could be the difference between life and death. In other words, every detail, even the smallest one, matters when it comes to combat, especially in a war like this, and the AR-15 gives soldiers the freedom to select the attachments and components they need to have an edge over their opponents. As Alexander Matiash, junior lieutenant of a Ukrainian Special Forces company, puts it, "I built this rifle to fit me. It's ready for any mission in extreme conditions. I installed a short upper receiver, changed the stock and grip, added a red dot sight, a laser, a flashlight, a suppressor." The level of customization of the AR-15 far surpasses almost any other rifle. You can even install specific custom triggers that fit your finger perfectly. But the benefits of the AR-15 don't end there. It's also got the advantage of working with two of the most commonly used forms of ammunition in the world: the .223 Remington cartridge, and most importantly from a Ukrainian perspective, 5.56 by 45mm NATO rounds. Thanks to that, Ukraine's AR-15s fully comply with Western military standards and can use all NATO standard ammunition, including tracer, armor-piercing tracer, and incendiary rounds supplied by Ukraine's NATO allies. There's also the fact that the AR-15 is a relatively lightweight rifle, making it easier for Ukrainian forces to carry around. This is particularly important for those defending the front lines who may have to hike several miles in a single day or quickly rush to retreat from a certain strategic position in response to Russian aggression. There's just one issue holding the AR-15 style rifles back for military use in Ukraine. And it's something that many gun enthusiasts out there will already be aware of, even though there are so many different AR-15 variants out there. They all have one key feature in common. They are semi-automatic rifles, meaning they fire a single shot per pull of the trigger. Obviously in intense, heavy-fire combat scenarios, like bursting into enemy-occupied buildings or exchanging close-quarters fire on the front lines, having to keep on pulling the trigger is an issue, and any soldier with a single-shot semi-automatic rifle will find themselves quickly outgunned and overwhelmed by enemies with fully automatic weaponry. Fortunately, Ukraine has an answer for that as well. There are a couple of ways around the semi-automation limitation. One is to simply swap out the lower receiver, like Alexander Matiash. On combat missions, I often just swap my civilian upper receiver onto the lower receiver of a Colt M4A1, which has a full auto mode. Again, this all comes down to the AR-15's customizability. You wouldn't be able to simply swap out half of most other rifles to essentially unlock new features, but with the AR-15, that's a very real possibility. The second and even better way in which Ukraine has addressed the single-shot issue is by creating its own take on the AR-15, the UAR-15, a select-fire rifle that can be switched between semi-auto and full-auto modes to suit the situation. The Defense of Ukraine account on X posted a description of the rifle. The UAR-15 assault rifle is a Ukrainian-made, semi-automatic self-loading carbine. It has several modifications with different barrel lengths. The rifle has higher accuracy, firing range, and lower weight compared to Soviet-era weapons. The layout is modular. It's possible to install a device for reducing the sound level of a shot, sights, and other tactical accessories. The resource of the barrel is approximately 10,000 shots. The UAR-15 was adopted by the Armed Forces of Ukraine in 2023. The UAR-15s are produced by the private Ukrainian contractor Zbroya LLC under the UCrop brand, with an American license to do so. As the tweet says, these rifles were adopted by Ukraine's armed forces in 2023, but have actually been around much longer than that. The Ukrainian National Guard was equipped with AR-15s before the Russian invasion even began. A majority of these rifles feature a mixture of American and Ukrainian-made parts, though Ukraine is transitioning towards more comprehensive domestic production, allowing it to produce weapons in the large quantities it needs to maintain its defensive and offensive efforts. Additionally, just like the other versions of the AR-15s we've seen in the past, produced by manufacturers in the US and elsewhere, the AR-15 has that classic modular design. Soldiers can customize it completely to suit their needs, maximizing their comfort, convenience, and ease of use, and making themselves more effective on the battlefield where it really counts. A Ukrainian instructor for combat and special training, who goes by the call sign Spartak, explains, "You can mount any accessories on this rifle, swap out the grip, the stock, the charging handle, whatever you want." In addition, the upper receiver of the AR-15 features Picatinny rails, which make it easier to slot various gadgets and accessories in place, like lasers for improved accuracy, red dot sights to see targets more clearly, and other tactical items to give soldiers an edge in any scenario. What's more, Ukraine has produced numerous variants of the AR-15, ready to roll out to troops for various missions and situations. That includes the AR-15S, the AR-15S1, and the AR-15SM, which all feature different barrel lengths, with longer barrels offering superior range and penetration capabilities, as well as reduced recoil, and shorter barrels being more compact and easier to handle, ideal for close-quarters situations. So the AR-15 is customizable, lightweight, and can function in nearly any ground-based combat scenario imaginable. But all of that wouldn't mean much if it didn't perform reliably and efficiently on the battlefield. Imagine, for example, a soldier storming an enemy bunker, only to find his rifle jammed and effectively useless, or groups of troops having to spend hours fixing broken components or treating their rifles for rust and other forms of degradation. Luckily for Ukraine, the AR-15 also excels in performance and reliability. The Ukrainian armed forces repeatedly put these rifles to the test, exposing them to harsh, extreme conditions and pushing them to the limit to see how far they can go. The results of those tests have been highly positive. Time and again, the AR-15 has proven itself to be ready for pretty much anything, fast becoming a firm favorite of soldiers in the Ukrainian Special Forces, National Guard, and State Border Guard Service. Meanwhile, on the other side of the conflict, Russian forces also have a relatively new assault rifle, the AK-12. Given Russia's history in rifle design and manufacture, you might expect the AK-12 to be an incredible weapon, following on from iconic rifles that came before, like the AK-47 and AK-74. However, that's not at all the case. The AK-12 has caused all sorts of problems for Russian soldiers, and its usage is seen by many experts as a hindrance to the Russian invasion effort rather than a help. The story of the AK-12 starts in 2011, when the very first prototype was given to current Russian President Vladimir Putin, who was the Prime Minister of Russia at the time. In 2013, Russia announced that its army would start receiving AK-12s in 2014, with the rifles being rolled out for service alongside various other new weapons like machine guns and sniper rifles. Trials were set to start in 2013, and it was expected that the AK-12 would replace the AK-74 as the primary assault rifle of the Russian forces. But those early tests revealed multiple problems with the rifle's design. Additionally, military commanders rejected the AK-12 as they said they already had more than enough AK-74s and didn't need a new rifle. So the launch of the AK-12 was pushed back and delayed again and again until it finally entered service in 2018 and was later used for the first time in the invasion of Ukraine. And since then, Russian troops have reported multiple issues with the rifle, forcing the Russian firearms manufacturer Kalashnikov to redesign it in the hopes of making it easier to work with. Among the issues highlighted is the fact that the rifle's stock just doesn't seem to sit right with Russian troops. As we look at different variants of the AK-12 released over time, the stock size continuously changes, suggesting that soldiers on the ground aren't happy, and the manufacturer is struggling to find the right sweet spot that provides comfort, reduces recoil, and allows for consistent and precise aiming. It's also been reported that Russian troops have attempted to modify their AK-12 rifles to make them easier to use, but they're having a hard time doing so since the AK-12 pales in comparison to the AR-15 when it comes to customization. That's one of the biggest issues with this weapon. None of its parts are interchangeable with older AK models like the AK-74 or components made by third-party manufacturers. So if a part breaks, the whole rifle is put out of action, either temporarily until it can be repaired or entirely, as it's so hard to swap out broken parts for alternatives. Not only that, but soldiers can't customize this rifle as much as the ones that Ukrainians are using. They can't fit the same broad array of scopes, sights, lasers, triggers, and other accessories. For some soldiers, that's not a problem, as they simply get used to using the AK-12 in its default state. But for many others, it is an issue, as they never truly adjust to the way the rifle feels and fires, and they would be much more efficient with it if they had the power to personalize it. The iron sights of the AK-12 are reportedly unusual and awkward too. Many Russian troops will have trained using classic AK-74s, and having to switch to the sights of the AK-12 represents a big and often difficult adjustment. Then there's the fire selector, which is also said by many gun experts to be unreliable, often not locking correctly, forcing soldiers to make additional adjustments in the heat of battle. And when you're out there, in the line of fire, the last thing you want to work with is an awkward, unreliable rifle that you have to keep fiddling with. Those little issues may seem small at first glance, but can be the difference makers in live combat situations. It's even reached a point where huge quantities of AK-12s have been captured and stockpiled by the Ukrainian armed forces, but Ukrainian soldiers aren't interested in using them, since they prefer their more reliable and customizable AR-15s instead. When asked if the AK-12 is easy to master, Spartak stated, "I don't think so. If you want real speed and precision, the AR system is much easier to control." And the problems with the AK-12 don't finish there. This rifle also has a serious issue with build quality, as footage from the front line shows AK-12s literally covered in rust. They have a metal coating that appears to be of very poor quality, with chips and corrosion increasingly common. In contrast, as Ukrainian soldiers themselves admit, rusty AR-15s are seldom seen. To top it all off, the AK-12s also have issues with ammunition. Accuracy levels can vary massively from round to round, even when using ammo sourced from the same crate. Because of that, in the field, Russian soldiers cannot always count on their AK-12 shots to go where they want them, and yet again, this causes all sorts of issues, making combat encounters less predictable and precise, and putting the Russians at a disadvantage when facing more reliable, consistent and accurate rifles like the UAR-15. Of course, the AK-12 isn't all bad. It has some advantages, like the superior range of around 800 meters when compared to the 550-meter range of the AR-15. However, for the most part, the Ukrainian rifles are simply better, and AK-12s are failing so badly that many Russians prefer working with the older AK-74s, and even Ukrainians, if forced to choose a Kalashnikov-style rifle, will pick the AK-74 over the AK-12 every time. So while Russia may have the bigger force, larger numbers of tanks, jets, and other forms of weaponry, in this battle of assault rifles, it's Ukraine that comes out on top. What are your thoughts on this? Could Ukraine's superior rifles give them a valuable edge as the war continues, or might Russia adapt, eventually creating an AK-12 variant that's good enough to compete? Share your ideas in the comments.